The stars trembled when the Veltar ships moved through space. For 3,000 years, these massive creatures had ruled the galaxy with iron claws and sharp teeth. They stood 8 feet tall, with dark scales covering their bodies like armor. Their yellow eyes glowed in the dark, and their razor-sharp claws could cut through steel. Admiral Velgorath sat in his command chair, looking at the star map before him. His fleet of 500 warships moved toward a small blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. The planet was called Earth by its people, but the Veltar did not care about names. They only cared about conquest. "Report," Velgorath growled, his voice deep and scary. "The planet has 4 billion small creatures," said Commander Velketh. "They call themselves humans. They are weak, Admiral. No claws, no armor, no fangs. They fight with metal tools and live in stone boxes." Velgorath laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Another easy victory. "How long did it take the last species to surrender?" 6 hours, Admiral. The Kelpari gave up after we showed them what happened to the Gorvan homeworld." The Admiral nodded. The Veltar way was simple and had never failed. First, they would arrive at a planet with their massive fleet. Then they would destroy one city, from space, just to show their power. After that, they would broadcast images of their past victories to the planet's leaders. Every species in the galaxy knew what the Veltar did to worlds that fought back. Complete destruction. No survivors. "Prepare the fear broadcasts," Velgorath ordered. "Show them the glass plains of Zerion. Show them the burning moons of Teltara. Show them what happens to those who resist the Veltar Empire." Far away on Earth, Captain Kang Taewoo sat in his small ship, the Starbound. He was part of Earth's deep space patrol, watching for asteroids and space junk. His ship was old and small, with just enough power to reach the edge of the solar system. He never expected to see anything important. But today was different. "Captain," said his communications officer, "I'm picking up strange signals. They're not from any Earth station." Kang moved to the console. The signals were strong and clear. Too clear. They were coming from something big, something powerful. As he listened, his blood turned cold. The signals were in an alien language, but the computer could translate some words. Words like conquest, and destruction, and surrender. But the worst part was the images that came with the signals. Dead worlds, burned cities, empty planets with nothing but glass where forests used to grow. "Get me Earth Command," Kang said, his voice tight with fear. "Now!" Back on the Veltar flagship, the fleet prepared for another easy victory. They had done this dance hundreds of times before. Every species was the same when faced with the might of the Veltar Empire. First came fear, then panic, then the desperate calls for mercy. "Admiral," called the sensor officer, "we're getting close to the human system. Should we begin the standard protocol?" Velgorath stretched his massive frame and showed his teeth. "Yes. Target their largest population center. One blast should be enough to make them understand." On Earth, Dr. Lee Hyo-jin sat in the emergency meeting of the World Defense Council. She had studied the alien signals for 3 hours, and what she learned made her sick with worry. "They've conquered over 200 worlds," she told the room full of leaders. "Every single species surrendered within days. The Veltar have never faced a real fight." "What makes them so powerful?" asked General Park Dong-min, the head of Earth's military forces. "Size, strength, and fear," Dr. Lee replied. "They're natural predators. They evolved to hunt and kill. But more than that, they use terror as a weapon. They destroy just enough to scare everyone else into giving up." President Kim Da-un looked around the room. "What are our options?" "We could try to surrender," said one advisor. "Maybe they'll let some of us live." "No," said Admiral Song Kyung-ho. "Look at their history. They take some prisoners as slaves, but most of the population dies anyway. Surrender just means we die on our knees instead of on our feet." The room fell silent. Everyone knew he was right. The Veltar did not want to rule humans. They wanted to replace them. "So we fight," said President Kim. "How long do we have?" 3 days, Dr. Lee answered. maybe 4 if we're lucky. While Earth's leaders made their plans, the Veltar fleet moved closer. They had fought gas creatures from the Veil Nebula, crystal beings from the Shattered Worlds, and even machine intelligences from the core systems. All had fallen to Veltar might. "This will be our easiest conquest yet," Velgoroth told his officers. "These humans are so weak, they probably don't even know we're coming." But the Veltar were wrong about one thing. Earth did know they were coming. And instead of preparing to surrender, humans were doing something the Veltar had never seen before. They were preparing to fight. In cities around the world, factories that made cars and computers began making weapons and armor. Farmers learned to use rifles. Office workers practiced first aid. Children were moved to safe places while their parents got ready for war. Captain Kim Woobin stood in the briefing room of the Earth Defense Station. Around him, 50 pilots listened as he explained their mission. "We have 12 fighters," he said. "They have 500 warships. The math is simple, we can't win." The pilots nodded. They all knew the odds. "But," Kim continued, "we're not trying to win. We're trying to buy time. Every minute we keep them busy is another minute for Earth to get ready." Pilot Yoon Sora raised her hand. "Sir, what if we don't make it back?" Kim looked at her. She was young, maybe 25. She had joined the Space Force to explore the stars, not to die in a war. But her eyes were steady and sure. "Then we don't make it back," Kim said simply. "But our families will remember that we tried." The Veltar fleet reached the edge of the solar system. Velgoroth looked at the small, blue planet on his screen. It looked so peaceful, so quiet. In a few hours it would be just another dead world in the Veltar Empire. "Begin the attack," he ordered. The war was about to begin. But for the first time in 3,000 years, the Veltar were about to learn what it meant to be afraid. The Veltar fleet moved into Earth's solar system like a storm of death. Admiral Velgoroth watched the small blue planet grow larger on his screen. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen a world that looked so peaceful. Green and blue, swirled together under white clouds. It almost seemed too beautiful to destroy. Almost. "Admiral," said Commander Velketh, "we're in position to begin the Fear Protocol." Velgoroth nodded. The Fear Protocol was simple and had worked for 3,000 years. Destroy one major city. Show the planet's leaders what would happen if they resisted. Wait for surrender. Easy. Target their largest population center, Velgoroth ordered. Prepare the city killer beam. But before the Veltar could fire, something unexpected happened. 12 small ships came racing toward them from the planet below. The ships were tiny compared to the massive Veltar warships. They looked like insects flying at a dragon. "Admiral," the sensor officer said, sounding confused. "The humans are attacking us." Velgoroth stared at the screen. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever attacked first. They always waited, hoped, tried to negotiate. But these humans were coming straight at his fleet with their tiny ships. "Impossible," he growled. "They must be trying to surrender. They're probably coming to talk." Captain Kim Woobin led the human fighter squadron toward the alien fleet. His hands were steady on the controls, but his heart was pounding. The enemy ships were huge. Each one was bigger than a city. His fighter could probably fit inside one of their weapons. "This is Fighter 1 to all units," he said into his radio. "Remember the plan. We're not trying to win, we're trying to show them that humans don't give up easy." "Copy that, Fighter 1, came the reply from pilot Yoon Sora. "Let's give them something to remember." The human fighters spread out as they approached the Veltar fleet. Kim had studied every piece of information Earth had about alien technology. The big ships were powerful, but they were designed to fight other big ships. They might have trouble hitting small, fast targets. He was about to find out if he was right. "Human vessels," came a voice over the radio. The computer translated the alien words into Korean. "This is Admiral Velgoroth of the Veltar Empire. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." Kim smiled grimly. "This is Captain Kim Woobin of the Earth Defense Force. Here's our answer." He pressed the firing button. Laser beams shot from his fighter toward the nearest Veltar ship. The beams hit the alien hull and did almost no damage. But they were not meant to do damage. They were meant to send a message. Humans do not surrender. On the Veltar flagship, officers stared at their screens in shock. The tiny human ships were actually shooting at them. It was like watching ants attack a boot. "Are they insane?" asked Commander Velketh. "Don't they understand what we are?" Admiral Velgorath watched the human fighters dance around his ships. The little vessels were fast and unpredictable. His big guns kept missing them. This had never happened before. "Destroy them," he ordered. "All weapons, open fire." The space around Earth lit up with weapon fire. Massive energy beams cut through the darkness, trying to hit the dodging human fighters. Most of the shots missed, but one beam caught Fighter 7. The ship exploded in a ball of fire. Captain Kim saw the explosion and felt anger burn in his chest. That was Park Jin-ho, a good pilot with a wife and 2 kids back on Earth. But there was no time to mourn. The mission was not over. "Fighter 4, Fighter 9, follow me," Kim ordered. "We're going for the command ship." This was the crazy part of the plan. Kim's fighter was almost out of ammunition and his engines were damaged. But he had one weapon left that the Veltar would never expect: himself. Pilot Yoon So-ra saw what Captain Kim was planning. "Fighter 1, what are you doing?" "Something they won't see coming," Kim replied. He turned off his weapons and pointed his ship directly at the Veltar flagship. Then he pushed his engines to maximum power. On the alien ship, the sensor officer watched the approaching human fighter with confusion. "Admiral, one of their ships is heading straight for us, but it's not shooting." "Maybe the pilot is surrendering," Velgorath said. "Prepare to bring him aboard." But Kim was not surrendering. As his fighter raced toward the enemy ship, he thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was only 5 years old. She liked to draw pictures of spaceships and dream about visiting the stars. If the Veltar won, she would never get that chance. "Tell my family I love them," he said into his radio. Then he crashed his fighter into the bridge of the Veltar flagship. The explosion was small compared to the size of the alien ship, but it was enough to damage the bridge and kill several Veltar officers. More importantly, it was something the aliens had never experienced before: an enemy willing to die to hurt them. Admiral Velgorath picked himself up from the floor of his damaged bridge. Green blood ran down his scaled face. Around him, his officers were dead or wounded. Emergency lights flashed red in the smoke. "Report," he growled. "Bridge controls are damaged," said a surviving officer. "That human, he flew his ship right into us. On purpose." Velgorath stared at the hole in his bridge wall. In 3,000 years of conquest, he had seen many brave acts. He had seen species fight hard for their homes. But he had never seen anything like this. The human had killed himself just to damage one ship. And from the way the other human fighters were moving, they were all ready to do the same thing. "What kind of species does this?" Velketh asked, his voice shaking. Down on Earth, Dr. Lee Hyojin watched the space battle on her screen. The human fighters were losing badly. 8 of the 12 ships were already destroyed, but they had done something important. They had shown the Veltar that humans were different. "The aliens are pulling back," reported General Park Dongmin. "Their attack formation is breaking up." Dr. Lee nodded. "They're confused. This isn't how their battles usually go." President Kim Da-yoon joined them at the command center. "What happens now?" "Now they'll try something different," Dr. Lee said. "They'll probably land ground troops. They want to understand what they're fighting." On the Veltar flagship, Admiral Velgorath made a decision that surprised his own officers. "Cancel the orbital bombardment," he ordered. "Sir?" Commander Velketh looked shocked. "We always start with the bombardment. It's the first rule of conquest. These humans are not like the others," Velgorath said slowly. "If we glass their cities from orbit, we learn nothing. And I need to understand what we're facing." He looked at the tactical display. Only 4 human fighters were left, but they were still attacking, still fighting. One pilot, Yoon So-ra, had been hit twice but refused to retreat. "Prepare the ground assault. Velgoroth ordered. We'll take their cities the hard way. As the remaining human fighters finally retreated to Earth, Velgoroth stared at the small blue planet. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had never felt before. Uncertainty. What kind of species chose death over surrender? What kind of warriors flew straight into certain destruction just to send a message? Soon, he would learn the answer. And when he did, the Veltar Empire would never be the same again. The Veltar dropships fell from the sky like burning meteors. Admiral Velgoroth watched from his flagship as thousands of his warriors descended toward Earth's surface. Each Veltar soldier was 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor, and armed with weapons that could cut through steel. They had never lost a ground battle. First wave is landing in the human city called Sol, reported Commander Velketh. Resistance should be minimal. But the reports that came back were not what anyone expected. Command, this is ground unit 7, came a panicked voice over the radio. The humans, they're not running away, they're shooting at us from the buildings. Velgoroth frowned. Of course they're shooting. All species fight a little before they surrender. No, sir, the voice continued. You don't understand. They're not just fighting. They're hunting us. In the streets of Seoul, Captain, Lee Min-ho crouched behind a destroyed car with his squad of soldiers. They had been watching the aliens for 2 hours, learning how they moved, how they fought, how they thought. The Veltar were powerful, but they fought like they always won. They walked in straight lines. They expected enemies to run away. They had never learned to be careful. Team 2, are you in position? Lee whispered into his radio. Ready, Captain, came the reply from Sergeant Nam Yujin. We have explosives, planted on the bridge. Team 3? We're on the rooftops, reported Corporal Shin Hyejin. When they walk into the trap, we'll be ready. Lee watched a group of Veltar soldiers march down the main street. They were looking for humans to capture or kill. Instead, they were walking into a carefully planned ambush. Wait for my signal, Lee said. Then he threw a rock at a nearby window. The glass shattered with a loud crash. The Veltar soldiers turned toward the sound and began walking toward the building. They thought they had found hiding humans. Instead, they walked directly onto the bridge that Nam had rigged with explosives. Now, Lee whispered. The bridge exploded. 3 Veltar soldiers fell into the river below. The others turned around, in confusion, trying to figure out what had happened. That's when Shin and her team opened fire from the rooftops. The aliens were caught in the open with nowhere to hide. 2 more Veltar went down before the others could find cover. But Lee wasn't done. While the aliens were focused on the rooftop shooters, he and his team attacked from behind. The Veltar found themselves surrounded by enemies they couldn't see, fighting a battle they didn't understand. Within 10 minutes, the entire Veltar patrol was dead or wounded. Command, Lee reported. Enemy patrol eliminated. No human casualties. Similar reports came in from around the city. Human soldiers were using tactics the Veltar had never seen before. They hid in sewers and attacked from below. They used mirrors to shoot around corners. They made noise in one place to draw aliens into traps in another place. On the Veltar flagship, Admiral Velgoroth listened to the battle reports with growing confusion. His soldiers were winning individual fights, but they were losing the war. Every time they secured an area, humans would attack from somewhere else. How many casualties, he asked. 300 dead, 500 wounded, Commander Velketh reported. But sir, that's not the worst part. What do you mean? The wounded soldiers are afraid, Velketh said quietly. They're asking to be pulled back to the ships. They say, the humans fight like demons. Velgoroth stared at his second-in-command. In 3,000 years of conquest, Veltar soldiers had never been afraid. They were the apex predators of the galaxy. Fear was something they gave to others, not something they felt themselves. Send down the second wave, he ordered. Double the troops. But doubling the troops only made things worse for the Veltar. More soldiers meant more targets for human ambushes, and the humans seemed to know exactly where the aliens were going before they got there. In an underground bunker beneath Seoul, Resistance leader Han Ji-woo coordinated the defense of the city. She had screens showing every street, every building, every move the aliens made. Team 7, you have 12 bogies heading your way from the north, she reported into her radio. Team 3 can provide covering fire from the shopping center. Copy that, Control, came the reply. We'll be ready, Han smiled grimly. The aliens were stronger and better armed, but they fought like they were still conquering primitive worlds. They didn't understand that humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They knew every dirty trick, every clever tactic, every way to turn weakness into strength. Ma'am, said her assistant, Corporal Yu Soo-jin, we're getting reports from other cities. The aliens are having the same problems everywhere. Good, Han replied. Send word to all teams. Phase 2 begins in 1 hour. Phase 2 was something the Veltar definitely weren't expecting. Instead of just defending, the humans went on the attack. Engineer Nam Yu-jin had spent 3 weeks studying captured Veltar equipment. He discovered that the aliens had one major weakness. Their technology was advanced, but it was designed to fight other advanced technology. It wasn't designed to handle simple primitive attacks. Their armor can stop laser beams, he explained to Captain Lee Min-ho. But it can't stop a knife between the plates. Their shields can deflect energy weapons, but they don't work against thrown rocks. Lee grinned. So we fight them with rocks and knives? Among other things, Nam replied. He showed Lee a collection of weapons that looked like they came from a museum. Crossbows, swords, even some weapons made from farm tools. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. That night, human teams attacked Veltar positions all over Seoul. But they didn't use guns or explosives. They used silent weapons that the alien sensors couldn't detect. Corporal Shin Hye-jin crawled through the ventilation system of a building the aliens had taken over. She carried a crossbow and a bag of crossbow bolts. The Veltar guards were watching for energy signatures and heat from human weapons. They never thought to look for someone with a weapon that was 1,000 years old. She took down 3 guards without making a sound. Then she planted explosives in their ammunition storage and disappeared back into the vents. The explosion lit up the night sky. All across the city, similar attacks happened. Humans appeared out of nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before the aliens could respond. They used sewers, air ducts, underground tunnels, and even the subway system to move around without being seen. By morning, the Veltar had lost control of half the city. This is impossible, Commander Velketh said, looking at the battle reports. How can primitive weapons defeat our advanced technology? Because they're not fighting our technology, Admiral Velgorath replied slowly. They're fighting us. For the first time, the Admiral was beginning to understand what they were really facing. The humans weren't just defending their world. They were teaching the Veltar what it felt like to be hunted. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving surrender requests. Velgorath felt a moment of relief. Finally, the humans were ready to give up. From who? He asked. From our ground troops, sir. They want to retreat back to the ships. The Admiral stared at the officer. Veltar soldiers were asking to retreat from a battle against a primitive species. It was the most shameful thing he had ever heard. But as he listened to more reports from the surface, he began to understand why his soldiers were afraid. The humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to make their enemies suffer. They turned every street into a nightmare, every building into a trap. Pull back the ground forces, he ordered quietly. Sir? Velketh looked shocked. You heard me. Pull them back. As the Veltar soldiers retreated to their ships, Admiral Velgorath made a decision that would have been unthinkable a week ago. For the first time in the history of the Veltar Empire, he was going to retreat from a primitive world. But as his ships prepared to leave Earth's orbit, he realized something that made his blood run cold. The humans weren't going to let them go. Even now, he could see small human ships launching from the planet's surface. The prey had become the hunters, and the hunt was just beginning. Admiral Velgorath watched his fleet retreat from the small blue planet, but he could not shake the feeling that something was very wrong. His sensors showed dozens of human ships following them into deep space. The vessels were small and looked like they were made from pieces of destroyed Veltar ships. How did they build ships so quickly? Commander Velketh asked, staring at the display. They didn't build them, Velgorath replied grimly. They took them from us. The human ships were strange mixtures of Earth technology and stolen Veltar equipment. They should not have worked at all. But somehow the humans had made them fly. Admiral Song Kyung-ho commanded the lead human ship, a vessel his engineers had named Revenge. It was built from the wreckage of 3 Veltar fighters and the engines of an old Earth cargo ship. It should have fallen apart the moment they started the engines. Instead, it flew better than anything the humans had ever built. All ships, this is Admiral Song, he said into his radio. Remember, we're not trying to destroy their entire fleet, we're trying to send a message. What message is that, sir? Asked Captain Jang Yo-jin from her ship. That humans don't let bullies walk away. The human fleet was small compared to the Veltar armada. But the humans had learned something important during the ground war. The aliens were not used to being attacked. They expected enemies to be afraid of them. When someone fought back without fear, the Veltar didn't know what to do. Sir, reported the sensor officer on Song's ship. The alien fleet is trying to form a defensive formation. Song smiled. Let them. They're thinking like victims now, not predators. On the Veltar flagship, panic was starting to spread. These humans had done something no species had ever done before. They had fought the mighty Veltar Empire to a standstill and then chased them into space. Admiral, said the communications officer, we're receiving a message from the human fleet. Put it on speaker, Velgorath ordered. A human voice filled the bridge, speaking in broken but understandable Veltar language. This is Admiral Song of the Earth Defense Force. You came to our world to make us afraid. Now we're going to teach you what fear really means. Before Velgorath could respond, the human ships attacked, but they didn't attack the way the Veltar expected. Instead of trying to fight the big ships, they went after the small support vessels. Fuel tankers, supply ships, communication relays. Captain Jang Yo-jin led her squadron against a Veltar supply convoy. The enemy ships were lightly armed because they had never needed to defend themselves. Who would be crazy enough to attack the supply lines of the Veltar Empire? Humans, apparently. Target their engines first, Jang ordered. We want them alive, not dead. The human attack was surgical and precise. Within an hour, they had disabled 20 Veltar support ships and captured their crews. More importantly, they had captured the ship's communication equipment. Dr. Lee Hyo-jin, now serving as the fleet's intelligence officer, studied the captured alien communications. What she found made her smile. Admiral Song, she reported. The aliens have been sending messages to their other fleets. They're telling them to avoid human space. What else? Song asked. They're scared, sir. Really scared. Some of their commanders are asking for reinforcements. Others are asking for permission to retreat even further. Song nodded. This was exactly what he had hoped for. The Veltar Empire was built on fear and intimidation. But now, for the first time in 3,000 years, they were the ones who were afraid. The human fleet continued to harass the Veltar as they retreated. They didn't try to destroy the big warships. Instead, they made life miserable for the aliens in 100 small ways. Engineer Nam Yu-jin had figured out how to jam Veltar communications. Every time the aliens tried to send a message, human ships would broadcast loud music or random noise. The Veltar couldn't coordinate their movements or call for help. Captain Lee Min-ho led boarding parties that captured alien supply ships. But instead of killing the crews, they did something the Veltar found even more disturbing. They let them go. Why don't you kill us? Asked a captured Veltar officer. Lee looked at the alien warrior. Even wounded and defeated, the creature was still dangerous. Its claws could tear a human apart. But Lee wasn't afraid. Because we're not like you, he said simply. We don't kill because we can. We kill because we have to. The Veltar officer stared at him. In the alien's eyes, Lee saw something he had never expected to see from a member of the master race. Confusion, fear, and something else. Respect. As news of the human resistance spread through the galaxy, something unprecedented began to happen. Other species that had been conquered by the Veltar started to ask questions. On the world of Cathara, Ambassador O Tai Young met with the leaders of the subjugated Catharan people. The Catharans were a peaceful species that had surrendered to the Veltar 50 years ago. "Is it true?" asked Elder Catharan Velnath. "Did the humans really make the Veltar retreat?" O nodded. "Not just retreat. We made them afraid." "How is this possible?" "The Veltar are the strongest warriors in the galaxy." "Strong, yes," O replied. "But strength without courage is just bullying, and bullies always run when someone fights back." Within days, the Catharan resistance was born. Then the Gorvani began to rebel, then the Xerians. All across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear for decades began to remember what it meant to be free. The Veltar Empire, which had seemed unshakable for 3,000 years, began to crumble. Emperor Velthagon sat in his throne room, on the Veltar homeworld, reading reports from across the galaxy. Everywhere his forces were being challenged, not by superior technology or larger armies, but by something far more dangerous. Hope. "How did this happen?" he asked his advisors. "One small world, one primitive species. How did they destroy everything we built?" War Marshal Velkareth stepped forward. He had been studying the human conflict for weeks, trying to understand what had gone wrong. "They didn't destroy us with weapons, my emperor," he said quietly. "They destroyed us with ideas." "What do you mean?" "For 3,000 years we ruled through fear. Every species in the galaxy believed we were unbeatable, but the humans proved that we could be beaten. More than that, they proved that we could be made to run away." The emperor's claws scraped against his throne. "So what do you suggest?" "We have two choices," Velkareth replied. "We can fight a galaxy-wide war against every species we've ever conquered, or we can try to make peace with the humans." The throne room fell silent. The idea of the mighty Veltar Empire asking for peace was almost unthinkable. Back in Earth's solar system, President Kim Da-un received an unexpected message. It came from the Veltar homeworld itself, transmitted on all frequencies to make sure the humans received it. "This is Emperor Velthagon of the Veltar Empire," the message began. "I wish to speak with your leaders about ending this conflict." Kim looked around the room at her advisors. General Park Dong-min shook his head. "It's a trap," he said. "The Veltar don't make peace, they only know conquest." But Dr. Lee Hyo-jin disagreed. "I don't think it's a trap. I think they're genuinely afraid. Look at the intelligence reports. Half their empire is in rebellion. They're fighting wars on 200 different worlds." Admiral Song, who had returned from his successful campaign against the Veltar fleet, had a different opinion. "It doesn't matter if it's a trap or not," he said. "We've already won." "What do you mean?" Kim asked. "We didn't set out to conquer the Veltar Empire. We just wanted them to leave us alone. Mission accomplished." Kim thought about this. "So what? Do we tell them?" "We tell them the truth," Song replied. "We'll leave them alone if they leave everyone else alone. But if they ever try to conquer another world, we'll be there to stop them." The message that went back to the Veltar homeworld was simple and clear. Earth would accept peace, but only on one condition. The Veltar Empire had to free all the species they had conquered and promise never to attack another world. Emperor Velthagon read the human demands with a mixture of anger and admiration. The humans were dictating terms to him, to the ruler of the galaxy's greatest empire. But as he looked at the reports from his generals, he realized he had no choice. The alternative was a war that would destroy everything the Veltar had built. "Send the message," he ordered. "Tell the humans we accept their terms." Years later, historians would mark this moment as the end of the Age of Fear and the beginning of the Age of Freedom. The Veltar Empire became a simple confederation of worlds. Former slave species became independent nations, and Earth became known throughout the galaxy as the world that taught the universe how to say no to bullies. But perhaps the most important change was in the Veltar themselves. For the first time in their species' history, they learned that there were things more powerful than fear: courage, hope, and the simple refusal to give up. The humans had taught them that strength without honor was just weakness in disguise. And that lesson would echo through the galaxy for generations to come.